First of all, fire alarm procedures. If the fire alarm is activated, locate the offices via the stairs. Please do not use the lifts. Assemble in Hawley Square on the green. Officers will assist you and advise when it is deemed safe to return to the chamber. Would you please switch off or turn to silent your mobile phones and do not make or receive calls while this meeting is in progress. Does anyone intend to film this meeting? I am surprised. Right. I would say, in the light of filming taking place, if any member of the public who objects to the possibility of being filmed, they may wish to take this opportunity to leave the meeting. If filming takes place, anyone in here may have their image captured. I urge those filming proceedings to avoid filming the public, particularly if there are children present. The following members have asked to speak under Council Procedure Rule 21. Councillors Banbridge, Messenger, Piper, Stuart Piper rather, Campbell, Crowe-Brown, Lynn Fairbrass, Constantine and Edwards. Are there any other members that wish to speak? So did I not say Councillor Wells? I do apologise. So that's Councillor Rozecki and Councillor Joe Jones. Okay. Bang goes the short meeting. Okay, we have apologies from Councillor Game and Taylor Smith, who unfortunately, well for us, but lucky for them, had holidays booked. And as this is an extraordinary meeting, we're unable to make it. So there's just the three of us here this evening. Does anyone have an interest to declare in the items of business on the agenda this evening? Okay. Right. It's my intention to introduce the item and move the recommendations. I'll then open the meeting up to speakers under 21, and at the end of that we will then take the vote. The local plan supports the Council's corporate plan priorities and is important for meeting the priority to promote inward investment and job creation. Together with the Council's economic growth strategy, it sets the framework for achieving the Council's economic ambitions. Not only does it help to deliver the economic strategy, it also makes provision for new housing to meet local needs and to support the growth of the workforce and other development requirements, and supports the provision of key new infrastructure. The local plan is not therefore a standalone document. It sits with other council documents to try to achieve the Council's wider ambitions for the area. Those documents are the economic growth strategy, the housing strategy and the corporate plan in particular. Following the decision by Council on the 18th of January 2018, this report sets out two options for taking the plan forward, and these options are as follows. Option 1, to publish a draft plan for comment as recommended to Council in January, that is, with the airport site allocated for mixed-use development, or Option 2, publish a draft plan which provides the opportunity for the development consent order process for the airport to continue and reallocates the 2,500 dwellings from the airport site to other locations in the district. Under Option 2, draft policy SPO5 would be deleted and replaced with text that recognises the existing use of the airport and acknowledges the current development consent order process for the site. This also provides the opportunity for any other interested parties to pursue the operational use of the airport through agreement with the landowners or through becoming an indemnity partner as part of a potential CPO process with the Council. The statement regarding existing use is a recognition of the current planning status of the site. Policy EC4 and related policies would continue to carry weight in planning decisions until the new local plan is adopted, and I have asked officers to make that clearer in the report than it exists in the current paper. The alternative housing sites are set out in the report at paragraph 2.16. This distribution would meet the criteria described in the report of paras 212 and 2.14. Housing development should be focused on urban areas or the urban edge and larger villages. That any housing distribution should avoid any additional traffic loading of the Hayne Road corridor, as advised by KCC Highways, and should be well related to the road network improvements proposed in the draft transport strategy, including the inner circuit. Housing development should not be located in the vicinity of the airport. Housing development should not be located adjacent to the national and international wildlife designations along the coast, and in addition, the designated green wedges should be avoided, as should flood risk areas and sensitive landscape areas, as identified through the landscape character assessment. In addition, the report seeks member support for the other changes recommended in January, which can be carried forward whichever decision is made on the two options I mentioned earlier. A new policy to support the Thanet landscape character assessment and its use as supplementary planning guidance. A new policy to support the designation of sites as local green spaces. Carrying forward the policy in the 2006 local plan to identify land for possible QE/QM expansion. A new policy to support ancillary accommodation for family members subject to design and other criteria, and a new policy to support the implementation of the government's national standards in relation to new development, internal space standards, energy and water efficiency, and accessible and adaptable accommodation. The report also asks members to consider two other matters: the designation of additional local green spaces and a new policy supported by the Council's partners for a policy to control fostering homes, particularly in Cliftonville West Ward. Again, both of these items can be considered regardless of the decision made on the options for the airport site. The report also indicates that the changes to the local plan timetable should be reflected in the Council's local development scheme, the published work programme for the draft local plan. The Thanet Transport Strategy, jointly prepared by Kent County Council and Thanet District Council, which supports the draft local plan, is scheduled to be published alongside the pre-submission draft local plan. It is important there is no further delay to the local plan process. Members will be aware that the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government is already assessing the position of the draft local plan in Thanet with a view to further intervention if the draft plan does not proceed in a timely manner. This would effectively remove council control of the process. Investment in the area could be significantly undermined or delayed, with a significant impact on development, economic growth and investor confidence in the area. Tonight kick-starts the final stage of this process. It is important that Council follows government guidance. A draft plan that does not do so is likely to be found unsound at examination by an independent planning inspector. This is likely to lead to significant delay in adopting a plan. This has previously been the experience of other councils in Kent who have had to make significant amendments to draft local plans. Without an up-to-date local plan, there is a risk to planning application decisions. The council would not be able to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply and would therefore be at particular risk at appeal in relation to housing developments. This risk would not only be losing appeals or High Court challenges, but potentially also having significant costs awarded against the council where decisions are made that do not reflect the available evidence. There is also a risk that critical infrastructure will not be provided, especially on smaller sites. This report will be considered by the Overview Scrutiny Panel on the 11th of July 2018. The views of the panel will be reported back to Cabinet meeting on the 19th of July 2018. I have to say that members have made a number of observations in the past week, and I would suggest that these could be addressed at overview and scrutiny, or indeed at Council on the 19th of July. Recommendations. I recommend that we take these recommendations. First of all, the following is moved: that we adopt option 2 rather than option 1. That Cabinet recommend to Council to agree for inclusion in the draft local plan the main changes in Annex 4 of the Council report of the 18th of January 2018 as modified by any decision on recommendation 1 above. The Cabinet recommend to Council to agree for inclusion in the draft local plan the other changes set out in this report regarding the identification of additional local green spaces and a proposed new policy relating to foster homes in the district as set out in the addendum at Annex 2. The subject to the other recommendations above, Cabinet recommend to Council that authority be delegated to officers to make such minor technical and factual amendments to the draft local plan as are necessary for clarity and consistency. The Cabinet recommends to Council that the draft local plan as amended, together with the associated evidence base, including the sustainability appraisal, habitat regulations assessment and the draft transport strategy, be published for comment under Regulation 19 for a period of 6 weeks and then subsequently submitted for examination under Regulation 22. The Cabinet recommends to Council that the Council request the examination inspector under Section 20(7) of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004 to recommend any modifications to the draft local plan which they considered are required in order to resolve problems that would otherwise make the plan unsound or not legally compliant. And for decision, that Cabinet agree that the Council's local development scheme, the LDS, be amended to reflect the timetable set out in this report and authorise officers to make such other minor changes to the LDS as are necessary to reflect the anticipated timetable for the local plan preparation. Thank you. I call upon councillors speaking under 21. First of all, oh sorry, we need a seconder.
Happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Savage. Councillor.
Can I ask a question of Karen? Forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think in your introduction you made reference to what appeared to be a change in the relationship of EC4 to the proposal as published. If that is so, can you tell us where that's dealt with in the recommendations?
I don't think that's quite what I said, Councillor Wells. Councillor Banbridge. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. On housing, I'd like to say, although I appreciate the housing numbers have been imposed upon us, I've made it quite clear to Group that I'm extremely unhappy about the additional allocation of houses made on Westgate and Birchington. As in line with the preferences of many at KCC, I would like to see these houses moved to the offered site at Cliffsend, which would feed in and support KCC's Parkway Station venture, which I feel is another essential factor in Thanet's economic recovery. I want to make it clear that both Councillor Messenger and I will be fighting for these houses to be removed from Westgate every step of the way. Regarding the airport, on the 18th of January, 35 of us voted against option 1 as it stood as the draft local plan, as it did nothing to protect Manston Airport, which is our greatest local asset and potential contributor to the revival and regeneration of our struggling economy here in Thanet. I propose that instead of the nebulous statement in the new draft plan regarding the airport, we continue to retain EC4, which is an actual planning policy and will ensure better protection on any prospective appeals against the airport. My reasoning is based on the evidence from the public inquiry less than a year ago, when the inspector found that policy EC4 is consistent with National Planning Policy Framework, which recognises that plans should take into account the growth and roles of airports and airport fields in serving business, leisure, training and emergency services needs. The inspector also found that policy EC4's approach is consistent with the government's aviation policy framework in recognising, amongst other things, that the aviation sector is a major contributor to the economy, facilitating trade and investment. The aviation policy framework supports growth within a framework that maintains a balance between the cost of aviation and its obvious benefits, and states in the short to medium term a key priority is to work with the aviation industry and other stakeholders to make better use of existing one-way capacity at UK airports. Also, this draft, am I boring you? Am I boring you? Also, this, okay, that's all right. Have you fully checked now, yeah? Okay, that's great. Good. Also, this draft report makes no mention of the airport's national policy statement, which was published on 5th of June this year. The national policy statement makes it quite clear that it is now government policy that best use should be made of existing capacity at regional airports. This draft also seeks to rely on the AVIA report, which is almost 2 years out of date and has not been subjected to rigorous independent testing, and most importantly was not tested in front of the inspector at the Lothian Shelf Appeal. Furthermore, the AVIA report was commissioned by the previous administration, and as a group we have almost all questioned its validity in isolation, in light of the fact that other reports have suggested Manston Airport will be a success with the right investment. Therefore, there is no justification for replacing EC4 with the less than robust terms of TDC report paragraph 2.112, which would essentially leave the airport unprotected by a clear planning policy in line with the wishes of the council and in line with national policy. Hence, I would urge Councillor Bayford. Hence, I would urge the Cabinet to protect the airport and keep EC4 in the emerging local plan. Thank you.
She wants to
Councillor
believe.
Messenger.
Yeah, she is so rude.
Thank you, Chairman. I have to say I am pleased the Cabinet is recommending only option 2 as the emerging local plan, as I believe putting option 1 forward would have been a travesty and completely against the democratic vote when this plan was not supported in January. I'm also pleased with the inclusion of Westgate local green spaces which were omitted previously. Both myself and Councillor Banbridge have objected to the housing numbers proposed in the different iterations of the emerging local plan and have been disappointed with the UKIP administration not interrogating this further rather than using a one-fits-all solution and look more broadly at the social economic climate in Thanet. The intervention by DCHLG has impeded this process. However, both Councillor Banbridge and myself will pursue the reduction of the overall housing numbers and its effects on Westgate residents through the consultation and appeal process. Furthermore, I am completely in support of Councillor Banbridge's statement on EC4 and look to Cabinet to ensure that the policy to support the airport is included in option 2.
Thank you, Councillor Messenger. I would suggest, as I said in my introduction, that this leaves here tonight to go to overview and scrutiny, and issues that people have, I suggest, would be best raised at that point. So tonight we'll go through to start the process. Thank you. Subject to Cabinet approving it, of course. Councillor Stuart Piper.
Thank you, Chair. There is clearly still a great deal of confusion surrounding a fair bit of this plan. I too, I'm happy to admit, thought you said that you were going to have it adjusted so that EC4 was included. Perhaps I misheard, but I thought you said in your introduction that you were going to get them to change that. I refer particularly to page 7 in the agenda pack, where the last sentence says that also means that current policy EC4 and other airport related policies would not be continued or replaced with equivalent policies in the new local plan. I'm confused because the advice we're being given is that we cannot protect the airfield because there's no evidence that it can be successful, and yet when the leaders had the initial presentation of this new local plan, there were key points made at that meeting. Two of the options, which were then options 2 and option 3, included a rewording of draft policy SP205 to include a deferment clause, and option 3, which was to delete draft policy SP05 and amend the text to recognise lawful use of the site without allocation as an airport for 2 years. Now, it seems that only just a couple of weeks ago we were being told it was possible to produce policy for this new emerging local plan that protected that airfield site, whether it was for 2 years or 3 years or longer, or the duration of a DCO or a CPO, as we now find is included in the documents. It does seem that we were being told it was possible to protect it. We now appear to be told it's not. I think to remove all the possibility of protecting that site goes against the wishes of the vast majority of the people of Thanet, and it ignores the wishes of the elected representatives who have come to this place on many occasions to discuss the issues and discuss the matters in detail. So really we're looking for some serious clarification here. At the leaders' meeting, I asked specifically whether the deletion of SP205 from the draft policy from January, whether if that was deleted, it meant that SP205 from 2006 remained extant, and the answer I was given was yes. So if that is the case, could we have that confirmed, please? If it's not the case, then why were we told at the leaders' meeting that the airport could be protected for provisional periods when clearly there would be no policy to allow that thing to happen, and could we have clarification on EC4 firmly before the meeting of the 19th of July if Cabinet recommends option 2 this evening? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Piper. Ask Mr Verrill to pick up a couple of the points that you made there.
Yeah, I think what was said at the leaders' meeting was that SPO5, if you put in a 2-year, effectively a deferment, it allows the DCO or CPO to go forward. The wording we are suggesting under option 2 here effectively does the same thing. Policy EC4 will continue to carry weight until such time as the new local plan is in place. That gives the opportunity for the DCO to be heard or for a CPO partnership to come forward. So the intention, what we've suggested here is that SPO5 comes out entirely as a policy, but the wording simply reflects the fact that there's an existing use and the fact that the DCO process is ongoing.
Could I have a very quick response, please, Chair?
Sorry, Councillor Piper, we need to move on. Councillor Campbell, please.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Chair. I shall be brief, because I think you'll be pleased with that. Yeah. No, that's unfair. Everybody keeps on mentioning about this ongoing DCO, and my understanding was that the DCO was withdrawn. I think there's a letter through from the Secretary of State's department that when the DCO, and if the DCO is actually then resubmitted, that the period of time actually carries on again. So currently at the moment there is no DCO that's active on that particular site. The report actually states on page 7 that SPO5 would acknowledge the current DCO process. So the report itself is in error. I would also state that you're obviously going against the officer's recommendation in recommending option 2. It clearly states that the officer's recommendation is option 1. You have every right to do so, of course, right. But then the report, this report that you're basing the decision on tonight, spends most of its time actually outlining the risks of picking option 2. Now, I mean, really, I think what will happen is this will be challenged when the actual local plan, if it goes through, option 2 is passed by Cabinet and passed by Council and goes through for examination. And surely there will be a need to be an evidence base for this particular decision, particularly on SPO5. Have you got now that evidence base that you can actually show to the inspector to actually prove that it's a sustainable development as an airport site? Because when we spent many years on the working group, you and I, Councillor, all the evidence base was that it was not sustainable. Now, I appreciate that it's been mentioned that that is 2 years out of date. That may change, I don't know, I doubt it very much. Are you intending to have a new examination as to the viability of this particular usage of the site?
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. I think we will leave that hanging. Councillor Wells.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of questions, please. I'll just leave for you, and a couple of points on perhaps what's happened so far tonight and how that built into the rest or whatever. I mean, I could have sworn when I read that thing that policy EC4 was going to be deleted. And when you look at Annex 3, there's a very clear statement there in the RIS that says, yeah, there's a very clear statement in the RIS that says, yeah, it says it in the report, yeah, and you are deleting EC4. So can I just ask Mr. Verrill then to explain? Can I ask Mr. Verrill then to explain how a deleted policy will continue to have weight in legal terms for what goes thereafter, and then I'll come back to the rest. Because I just think there is real confusion over this. I'd say, Councillor, maybe if you reread the sentence at the start, not related to EC4, I think that might help as well. So if you could do either of those two things.
Firstly, what I actually said was, I referred to the fact that policy EC4 and related policies would continue to carry weight. Didn't like that. I think I asked Mr. Verrill to actually explain how that works.
The policies in the current plan continue to carry weight until they're replaced. So that's how.
So, okay, but let's be quite clear. My understanding in the iterations and discussions that went on previous to this evening was that EC4 could not continue because there was no evidence base, and that's one of the risks as well.
It's continuing because it's already there, Councillor Wells, and unless and until the new local plan is adopted, EC4 is still there, as are all the other airport-related policies.
Well, we want it to
Councillor
remain.
Crowe-Brown.
Sorry, can I ask just two questions? They're very simple.
I'm sure that
Okay.
is not the right.
Well, yeah. Could you just tell us how many of the new sites are on brownfield land, and are you sure that all the sites have been properly surveyed and prepared for the examination? And just those assurances, please.
Of the additional sites that are shown in the addendum, none of them are on brownfield land. They will all be this, and they have been the subject of some survey work, and that will continue as we head into the examination.
Thank you. Councillor Crowe-Brown.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, back in 2015, I was very hopeful that we would listen to our officers and not take risk. And it was working swimmingly until January the 18th, where legal advice was totally ignored, and the professional advice of my strategic planning team, who are first-class people. I just worry that option 2 will probably end up with us going to judicial review, and it will cost a small fortune on a cash-strapped local authority. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lynn Fairbrass.
Thank you, Chair. On the 18th of January, we took a vote on the draft local plan and 35 councillors rejected it. Prior to that date, a second option was presented to the group leaders that would have protected the airport site for 2 years, giving time for a DCO or CPO to be accepted before reverting to policy SPO5. The Conservative and TIC groups rejected it. We now have the same draft local plan presented with a second option that sees no protection for the site and 2,500 more houses predominantly across the greenfields of Birchington, Westgate, Westwood and Minster. If the DCO fails, we will end up with a windfall allocation on the site on top of the current allocation. Now, Councillor Bayford, you sat on the local plan working group and you're perfectly aware that it needs to be an evidence-based plan. Option 1 is evidence-based, and although there was a slight risk with the rejected second option, it was nothing compared to the risk that the currently proposed option 2 is likely to bring down on this council. Councillor Bayford's perfectly aware that most of the brownfield sites in the area have already been allocated and that there is a formula produced by central government that has to be used to reach the OAN figure. Yet he remains silent while the MP for North Thanet propounds that there is an adequate supply of brownfield sites without the former airport site to contain the number of houses required. He also remains silent while members of his group continue to mislead the residents of this area that there is a way to reduce those numbers, when there isn't, or he would already be doing that. I challenge him now to tell the truth about these two issues. The UKIP group were accused of spreading Project Fear, when we were actually presenting the truth so that people might realise the consequences of failure to adopt. Well, there is now no doubt that Project Fear was actually Project Fact. I'm also interested in the speed with which this proposal has been presented, when the amended MPPF has now extended the deadline for recalculation to January of next year. The newest quickly prepared sites have not had the opportunity for public scrutiny at all, yet both Tory and TIC are seemingly happy to gloss over that fact. Option 1 is the only evidenced version and has been informally endorsed by Derek Stebbings, a respected planning inspector. It still allows for some aviation, and without evidence the site can't be considered as aviation only.
Rubbish.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Fairbrass. Councillor Constantine.
I shall try and keep my comments brief. I'd like to start off by saying that I think, excuse me, I was speaking. I would like to start off by saying that this council, I feel, needs to recognise that the greatest asset that Thanet has got isn't in fact a defunct airfield or airport, it's actually the people. And I think what's happening here is that Thanet District Council councillors are selling short the people of Thanet. The options on the table, the option 1, includes the potential for this area to have built in quick time 400 social homes. This piecemeal approach to building in Thanet is not going in any way, shape or form to deliver those social homes, nor are we going to get the potential employment gains for our local people that we could get. So I think we need to move forward with this. We need to recognise that the bill to house our homeless families is absolutely astronomical and is completely outstripping what we can afford. It's moved from £66,000 in year 2010 to approximately £1.1 million in year 2017. This is an opportunity for us to grasp the nettle and actually help house our families, and they desperately need it. We need to stop kicking this issue around like a political football and actually do a proper job as councillors. Thank you.
Tell the truth.
Thank you, Councillor Constantine. Councillor Edwards. Thank you, Chair. As we are not in intervention, why can't we use the Crawley model? We are in intervention, Councillor Edwards. Gentlemen, that concludes the member speaking. We've moved and seconded the various proposals tonight. Is that agreed? Agreed. Oh, sorry, I do apologise. I did miss Councillor Rozecki. You're on one list and I didn't transfer you across. I do apologise. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. We might get a different result when we vote again.
Thank you, Chair. A brief question regarding MHCLG. Have any meetings taken place here at the council offices or elsewhere? And can members see any evidence of notes of meetings or minutes of the meetings or instructions from MHCLG?
Chief Executive.
Thank you. There's been one meeting with the Ministry of Housing at these offices, and there are no notes or minutes of that meeting.
Nothing changes, does it?
Let me clarify, because the reason for that is this was a meeting that the Ministry requested. Because we're in intervention, and the purpose of that meeting was for the Ministry of Housing and local government to come and ask us questions about this situation, and we responded to their questions. It wasn't a meeting in the sense of producing minutes. It was a meeting for them to inquire as to why we are where we are, and for us to provide information to them, and that is what we have done.
You should minute every meeting.
Councillor Joe Jones.
Thank you, Chair. You've already answered the question whether MHCLG are in intervention. I'm not quite sure exactly what detail that actually means.
Sorry, would you like to clarify your question, Councillor Joe Jones?
Yes, the report says that there is intervention process. So, what is it? Is it in or is it out?
Chief Executive.
Right. As you'll be aware, following a letter that we received from the Secretary of State back in, was it January? March. They made it very clear to us that we were one of 3 local authorities that they were following direct intervention with in respect of our progress on our local plan. So as a result of that letter, we found ourselves in intervention. Now what that means is that the Ministry, as I said, came in, met with officers at TDC to establish exactly why we were not progressing our local plan. And as a result of that, what now happens is they undertake to do a report, and that report really consolidates their findings on the matter, and the recommendations will come out of that report, which will be referred to the Secretary of State for him to consider what further action he takes in respect of our local plan and respect of whether that is direct intervention or a range of other options they might have, including asking one other local authority to do our local plan for us, including Kent County Council. Now, we don't know what the recommendations are at this stage. We understand that they have probably drafted a report, but we have had no indication as to when we can expect recommendations from the Secretary of State or what actual action he is taking. We are still waiting for that. But there are a range of options available, but it wouldn't be right for us to try and assess at this stage what they are. We'll have to wait until we've heard from the Ministry.
Okay. I did check to see whether the result is the same. Recommendations have been moved and seconded. Are they agreed? No. Thank you, members. And I would remind members that this draft plan now moves to overview and scrutiny, so members have an opportunity for further comment at that point in time. Thank you very much. Good evening.